Next is Annette Fromm, Dr. Annette Fromm, who did her doctorate at the University of Indiana in folklore. She specializes on the Jews of Yanina. She wrote a book on the Jews of Yanina. She's also one of the editors of Sephardic Horizons. I don't know if she's the associate or assistant, she can tell us. And she also is very critical, very thorough. She's a tough editor, but also very rewarding, asks very challenging questions. And without any further ado, a Romaniote Jewish woman, Annette Fromm.
Thank you, Yitzhak, and thank you for everybody's here. I'm associate editor, review editor on Sephardic Horizons, which has put me back into Jewish studies. I'd like to thank you, Yitzhak, for inviting me to participate in this wonderful celebration. Like everybody else, we've known each other a long time. We met in Greece in 1982 when I was starting my research project on the Jewish community of Yanina. Through my career, I moved in and out of folkloristics, which is my academic home base, museology, which is my vocation, and Jewish studies. The subject matter of my doctoral dissertation and the book that followed was the Jewish community of Yanina, as Yitzhak said, and their ethnic identity as expressed in traditional culture. My work life was spent primarily in museums with forays into academia. These three areas intersected in numerous times as I've worked in Jewish museums, as a director in Tulsa, Oklahoma, of all places, and a museum educator with curatorial responsibilities where I am now in Miami Beach, Florida. As Yitzhak just said, he invited me to speak this evening about the area of my primary research, Greek-speaking or Romaniote Jewry, which initially brought us together. In the past so many months, the airwaves have been bombarded by a variety of Zoom talks. I'm sure you've listened to many of them about Jewish history and culture from around the world. The Jews of Greece and the so-called Romaniotes, primarily from Yanina, that magical city on the lake, have been presented by a number of notable voices. I've always wondered about that term Romaniote, and I've heard a few people this long day use it. How are names or labels ascribed to people? Ashkenazi, Sephardi, Mizrahi, Bnei Israel, the indigenous Jews of India, Beta Israel, Ethiopian Jews, formerly known as Falashas, are just a few conferred on Jews. From all I've read, one tidbit I learned this past year was that what I long suspected, the Jews living in pre-Inquisition Spain were not Sephardic, but Spanish. The term Sephardi, as they became known, was applied or emerged after the expulsions. At least two intertwined elements have contributed to labels given to the larger categories of the Jewish communities: rite, religious rite, and culture. Religious or liturgical rites, this is my weak point, I must say, have been associated with Jews living in certain geographic areas. For the two Jewish ethnic divisions in Europe, Minhag Ashkenaz is the order of the prayers according to the custom of Germany and Poland, and Minhag Sepharad is followed by Jews whose ancestry originated in the Iberian Peninsula. Minhag Romania was the quote-unquote religious rite of the Roman or Byzantine lands. In this practice, traditional prayers, including distinct hymns and liturgical poetry, were translated and recited in Greek, though written with Hebrew letters. The first Machzor Romania, a book of prayers used all year, was published in the early 16th century. There seems to be a debate when and where, but about that time. Cultural attributes have been associated with geography also. Ashkenaz and Sepharad referred directly to specific regions in Europe. Romaniote is a geographic label referring to the Jews of the Byzantine Empire, which was referred to as Romania. With Greek as the lingua franca, these Hellenized Jews lived among non-Jewish majorities. They absorbed many of the customs, traditions, and the language of their neighbors. Later, in Ottoman Greece, Greek-speaking Jewish communities flourished in what was regarded as backwaters, especially Epirus, Crete, Central Greece, and the Morea. By the 19th century, Yanina's community was the most prominent of these Greek-speaking Jews. Folklore or oral tradition plays a role in the label that is now used to mean Greek-speaking Jews. I have a kitty asking to go out. She can wait. A legend dates the origins of the Jewish community of Yanina to a ship carrying Jewish slaves from Judea to Rome sometime shortly after the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE. The ship wrecked, sometimes it's a storm, on the shores of the Balkan Peninsula, maybe today's Albania. You know, legends, folklore have variants. This persistent legend appears as a fact in numerous print and online sources. In a 2015 interview in the online Israel National News, a leading community member recalled it. A guide at the Yanina Synagogue in New York's Lower East Side repeated it again to a New York Daily News. Several descendants in the past year's Zooms that I heard repeated versions of this legend. They incorrectly believe and perpetuate the notion that Romaniotes derives directly from ancient Rome, the destination of the legendary ship lost at sea. Self-identity is the crux of this discussion. From the 16th century onward, Greek-speaking Byzantine Jewish communities living under the Ottomans were overwhelmed, we all know this, by the more numerous Spanish and Portuguese exiles, many acculturated to the newcomers' Sephardic rite and culture. In locations such as Constantinople and Thessaloniki, however, congregations of former Greek-speaking Jews referred to themselves as Gregos, or Greeks. In 17th century Corfu, the Jews referred to themselves as the Jews of the Greek nation, or native Corfiot Jews. I challenge the use of Romaniot as what I consider to be a constructed label. During my research year in Yanina, I asked elders there how they identified themselves. They responded that they considered themselves as Greek Jews. It was only after World War II, upon return from the concentration camps and the resettlement agencies informed them that they were Sephardic. They told me I was Sephardic, I was told numerous times. Now, as Yitzhak said, I am a descendant of the Yanina community of Greek-speaking Jews. If you were here many hours ago, I know Judith Cohen, you were. Yitzhak and I had a discussion. My husband's a Zigizug and my father was a Zigizug, ergo my last name Fromm. My maternal grandparents immigrated to New York City early in the 20th century. They married and raised their children there. Since I was young, I don't know why, I identified myself as a Greek Jew. This attempt at self-identification was met with a few formulaic responses, including, is one parent Greek and one parent Jewish? In the 50s and 60s, I date myself, and even later, American Jews had difficulty wrapping their heads around the fact that not all Jews are Ashkenazi. In addition, as a folklorist, I was sensitized to reference terminology used by the community with which I work. In other words, I called things what the community called them, not my terminology. I've taken this step further in my professional practice in museums, where terms from the source communities for objects are used alongside English language terms, thus respecting the donors of these items. So to summarize, geography, culture, and religious rites often contribute to labels used to categorize people. Two origins of the Romaniot tag for today's Greek-speaking Jews have circulated. Romaniot is a label applied by scholars to the widespread historical community with Byzantine origins. Romaniot also has been appropriated vernacularly in about the past 30 years by community members who associate themselves with a legend's reference to ancient Rome. Now I'm going off the track, and I don't play video games, but I understand there's video games and movies where when you come to the end, you can choose which conclusion you want. So I have two conclusions with which to wrap up this discussion. Both reflect thoughts that have been swirling around in my head and don't yet have a clear articulation. And I thank my husband for helping me to try to articulate. Number one, my conclusion is that the label Romaniote is a direct reference to the Greek-speaking Jews who inhabited the Byzantine Empire. Greek Christian and Jewish descendants of citizens of Byzantium self-identify as Rumyi. They say, "Είμαστε Rumyi," we are Byzantine. Romantic as the shipwreck legend that has circulated among community members may be, Romaniote has no relationship to ancient Rome. Number two, conclusion number two. Let's return to my initial question about how people get labeled, and in addition, how do they call themselves? My conclusion is that the label Romaniote, a direct reference to the Greek-speaking Jews of the Byzantine Empire, is a misapplied translation of Rumyi, the term Greek Christian and Greek Jewish descendants of Byzantium used to self-identify. I believe it was constructed by scholars seeking to place this small community of Jews into the framework of European Jewry. This academic term became disassociated from the people. It is not how community members have called themselves. Perhaps one of the positive outcomes of the past 15 months of Zooms has been the attention paid to the Greek-speaking Jews, indeed a minority within a minority of the global Jewish community. The Greek-speaking Jews and their descendants have long warranted the attention because of their little documented and quite rich history, culture, and heritage. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Annette. You know, we had Hellenistic Jewry, and we had Byzantine Jewry, and we've had Karaite Jewry. Okay, the Karaites call their language Romaica. Okay, and that the Karaite Judeo-Greek or Greek that they've spoken hasn't been researched very much. Karaites are researched a lot, but we don't. You're right, Annette. We can't call this whole culture Romaniotes. Okay, but you know, in the academia they call it Yavanic, from Yavan, meaning Greek. But you can't define that anyway. But not that it's so important what you define it, but the actual culture is much more encapsulating and wide ranged.
Okay.
I don't know what you make of that, but it's not that we need a new definition, but the Greek Jews and the Greek Jews of the Greek diaspora and the Jews of Hellenism, of the Hellenistic Empire and the Roman Empire, where Greek was their culture, it's all part of it. But technically, they're not Romaniote. Okay, that evolved later.
Yeah. I think it kind of relates partly to what Paul Haguel, who has also been published in Sephardic Horizons, spoke of, that Jewish Greeks, Greek Greeks, Greek-speaking Jews. I just wanted to kind of like shake things up.